Imagine this, a crowded hall filled with educated minds, experts in suits, professors, and businessmen, all seated in neat rows, whispering to one another, waiting for the speaker to give the solution to a burning problem the whole city had been struggling with. The air was thick with tension. And then, unexpectedly, from the back of the hall, came a quiet voice that nobody had noticed before. "I know the solution," said a simple cleaning lady, holding her broom, her voice trembling yet steady. At first, people laughed. Some rolled their eyes, others shook their heads as if to say, what could she possibly know? But 10 minutes later, when she finished speaking, the entire audience rose to their feet and applauded with tears in their eyes. And before we dive into this powerful true-to-life story, let me remind you. If you love inspiring stories that touch your heart and awaken your soul, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Now, let's go back to that unforgettable day. The conference was about the rising problem of youth unemployment in the city. Young men and women had degrees, but no jobs. Families were breaking apart, parents were worried, and frustration was spreading like wildfire. Experts were giving long speeches with heavy words, statistics, policies, budgets. But nothing sounded practical. Nothing touched the heart. And then came a pause, a silence when the moderator asked, "Does anyone here have a real solution?" That's when Maria, the cleaning lady, lifted her head. She had been wiping the floors quietly for hours, invisible to everyone. She was wearing her faded uniform, her hands rough from years of scrubbing floors, her shoes old and torn. Yet her eyes held a certain wisdom, the kind that life's hardships carve into a person's soul. At first, the moderator was shocked. "Ma'am, are you serious?" he asked gently, almost patronizingly. She nodded. People chuckled in the audience, some even smirked, but Maria stood tall. She walked slowly to the microphone. Her hands trembled as she adjusted it, and her voice cracked at first. But within moments, the hall grew so silent that you could hear the soft hum of the lights above. "I was once a student like many of your sons and daughters," she began. "I had dreams. I wanted to be a teacher. But my father fell sick, and I had to give up my education to work. At first, I was ashamed to clean floors, to wash dishes, to carry the burden of survival. But I learned something valuable, that every skill, no matter how small, has dignity. And that is the solution." People leaned forward, curious now. "You see, the problem is not that there are no jobs," she continued, her eyes sweeping across the hall. "The problem is that we have raised generations to believe that only a big office, only a suit, only a degree can bring pride. We forgot to teach them that dignity lives in every kind of work, whether it's sewing, baking, repairing, or cleaning. Instead of waiting for the world to hand them jobs, we must teach our children how to create, how to serve, how to start small, and grow." Her words struck deep. You could see parents lowering their heads, realizing the pressure they had unknowingly placed on their children. Maria shared her own small journey, how she started selling homemade food in her neighborhood after her shifts, how she trained her own daughter to braid hair and make a living when school became too costly, how she turned her pain into lessons of survival and independence. She raised her hand as if holding an invisible flame. If we can teach our young ones to stop seeing work as shame and start seeing it as power, they will never be unemployed. They will be creators, not beggars of opportunities. By now, the hall was so quiet you could hear people breathing. Her raw truth had peeled away the layers of pride and pretense. And then, for the final 10 minutes, Maria gave practical ideas, community workshops, skill-sharing circles, teaching kids to fix things, cook, craft, and innovate with their hands and minds instead of waiting endlessly for companies to hire them. She spoke with such passion that even the professors who had earlier dismissed her were nodding in agreement. When she finally stepped back, there was a moment of silence. A deep, heavy silence, the kind that comes when people know they've just witnessed something life-changing. And then, applause. It began with a few claps, then grew louder and louder until the entire hall stood on its feet. Some wiped tears from their eyes. The moderator himself came down from the stage and hugged her. "Thank you," he whispered. "You've just said what we could not in all our books and speeches." That day, Maria went back to her mop and broom as if nothing had happened. But her words lingered. They spread across the city, carried in whispers and stories, until young people began meeting in small groups, sharing skills, starting micro-businesses, finding dignity in whatever they did. It became a movement, all because one invisible woman had dared to speak. And now, as you're listening to this, I want you to think about something. How many times have we dismissed the wisdom of those who don't wear suits, who don't have titles, who don't stand on stages? How many times have we overlooked the quiet heroes around us? Maybe the greatest solutions are not in the hands of experts, but in the hearts of simple, ordinary people who live the struggles every day. So, my friend, if this story touched you, if it reminded you that dignity lies in every effort,